Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Tonight I'm going to do something a little bit different. I am going to narrate a story for you guys. So I found this story on the Scary Stories subreddit and I thought it was really good, so I really wanted to share it with all of you. Without further ado, please turn off your lights and grab a snack, because I'm about to present to you The Man Next Door. A few weeks ago, we bought a new house in a quiet neighborhood. Everything seemed like your typical suburban paradise. The whole block looked like something you would see in a magazine. Every yard was perfectly groomed, and every car was brand new and clean. We were excited to become a part of this picturesque community, and even though our house was at the end of the block, we had already become determined to put everything we had into making our new home fit in with the rest of our neighbors. The first weekend at the house, we put fresh paint on the patio and trimmed a couple of overgrown shrubs along the sidewalk, which made our home look even more beautiful than when we moved in. Our neighbors all recognized the effort we had immediately put in, and they were all appreciative of it. One of the ladies from across the street told me that our house had been vacant for quite some time, and we couldn't figure out why. She just told us that it was due to him. When I had asked who him was, she started to cry, and she said she apologized and she needed to leave. She turned around and walked off hurriedly. This type of encounter also occurred with two other residents of the block, one of which even mentioned something about him being the reason she couldn't sleep at night. I again asked who him was, and she became very upset and insisted upon going home. She, like the first neighbor, turned around and left without saying another word. I told my wife about these conversations, and while she put on a brave face, I could tell that she was uneasy at the thought of not being safe in her own home. We had agreed to keep an eye out for any unusual behavior from anybody, as ladies across the street still refused to tell me who him was. A couple of days later, I was in my living room trying to figure out the best way to arrange the furniture, when, through the window, I noticed my next-door neighbor standing in his yard watering his rose bush. We made eye contact, and I offered up a friendly smile with a slight wave of my hand. He didn't react and offered nothing in return except a serious stare. After a few seconds, I turned away to go on with the task at hand. Later that evening, during dinner, my wife asked me if I had noticed the man next door. She said she was watching TV in the living room and happened to glance out the window and saw him watering his rose bush, staring into our window, the whole time making eye contact with her, but never moving. She said his stare was almost hypnotic. It felt as if he was seducing her with his gaze, and she was unable to look away. I asked her how long it lasted, and her response was, "I don't know. I kind of lost track of time. He was just standing there, watching me, and I couldn't bring myself to look away." I know that we have all had crazy neighbors, and we've all dealt with those few nosy ones in the past. I decided that the best thing I could do would be to minimize contact with him. I bought some dark curtains to hang from the windows that faced his house and went home to hang them. As I climbed the stepladder to mount the curtain rod, I got the feeling that something was watching me. I glanced out the window, and there he was, my neighbor, standing in his yard, watering his rose bush, watching me. I finished installing the curtain rod and hung the curtains. I took one last look at him as I pulled the curtains closed. Almost immediately, I heard a tap on the window. I opened the curtain, and my neighbor was still standing there, staring, watering his rose bush. I closed the curtain and again heard a tap on the window. Once again, I opened the curtain to find nothing but my neighbor, standing there, staring, watering his rose bush. A third time, I closed my curtain and, as expected, heard a tap on the window. I flung the curtain open and saw my neighbor, still standing in his yard, still staring at me, watering his rose bush. But this time, I noticed something in his left hand. It appeared to be a handful of pebbles. So I closed the curtain, but peered through the corner. Sure enough, as soon as the curtain was fully drawn closed, my neighbor tossed a pebble at my window. The creepiest thing is that his stare didn't shift in the slightest. His head didn't move. In fact, The only part of his body that moved was the hand that threw the pebble. I was starting to feel a little uneasy, but being the man of the house, I felt the need to be strong. I closed the curtain and tried to ignore him, but he kept throwing pebbles at the window. All I could hear was the tap, tap, tap from the pebbles hitting the window. I stepped out onto the front porch and looked over to his yard. He was gone. His yard was empty except for a dead rose bush that was previously alive and flourishing with flowers due to his constant watering. I turned around and went back inside. The pebbles tapping on my window immediately resumed. I opened the curtain in a fury and was met with my neighbor's gaze. There he was, staring at me, watering a vibrantly lush rose bush that was just dead a few seconds ago. Bewildered, I closed the curtain, determined to ignore my neighbor, but I was greeted instantaneously with the now familiar tap of pebbles on the window. This seemed to go on for hours. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of pebbles hitting my window was going to drive me mad. Tap, tap, tap. It was driving me crazy. Tap, tap, tap. I had become a prisoner to the mad delusions of the crazy person next door. Tap, tap, tap. I tried to call the police, but was informed that this type of behavior was not criminal, so there was nothing that they could do. The tapping of pebbles hitting the window continued non-stop. Tap, tap, tap. I'm not even sure how many days had gone by at this point. 2? 3? No, it must have been at least 4 days. Tap, tap, tap. The constant tapping of pebbles was driving us crazy. I had finally decided that I had enough. I marched outside and walked to the chain-link fence that separated our properties. There, I saw the dead rose bush that looked so alive from inside my house, but nothing else. It was at this point that I finally got a good look at my neighbor's house. Every window was boarded up, and the grass was brown with weeds growing all over the sidewalk. His house did not fit in with the rest of the neighborhood. Why hadn't I noticed this before? The rest of the block looked immaculate. How could this one house look so dilapidated all of a sudden? I turned around to go back inside my house, but felt like something was watching me. I turned back to my neighbor's house, and that's when I saw him, standing in his yard. His clothes shredded and his hair disheveled. He was watering his rose bush, but it was dead, and the water coming from the hose was brown and thick like mud. For the first time, I saw his blank stare change. He cracked a slight, wicked smile and slowly extended a hand towards me. I turned back to my house and tried to run up the stairs to the front door. My foot fell through the first stair, and I fell to my knees. I looked up at my beautiful house, and it was now a decaying mess. I pulled myself to my feet and scrambled up the rest of the stairs, crashing through the front door. Inside, I found myself back in my beautiful new home. Everything was clean and new, just as I had left it a few minutes before. The tapping of pebbles hitting my window started again. Not knowing what else to do, I curled up into a ball in the corner and closed my eyes. It'll all be over soon, is what I kept telling myself. Tap, tap, tap. This can't be real. Tap, tap, tap. After what seemed like hours, the tapping stopped. I found the courage to pull myself to my feet and walk back outside in an effort to confront my neighbor. I stepped out onto my patio and looked over at the neighbor's house. His house looked amazing. His yard was the best looking one on the block, and the rose bush was alive again. In fact, it was one of the biggest I had ever seen, with flowers blooming on every square inch. My neighbor was standing right next to his rose bush, watering it. His clothes were brand new, and his serious stare had changed into a friendly smile. He waved and greeted me with a, "Howdy, neighbor." I was unable to respond due to the shock of such a series of recent events. I just stood there while he made his way to the fence. "It's about time you came out to say hi," he said to me. "For a minute there, I thought you were one of those weirdos that hadn't died yet." "Excuse me?" I replied. "I tried to get your attention by tossing pebbles at your window, but you kept ignoring me." His friendly demeanor seemed to shift to a more of a concerned one. "You do know you're dead, right?" he asked. everyone on the block is dead. Although, some don't seem to cope well with the news. My jaw dropped, and I ran back inside my house as fast as I could. It couldn't be true, could it? I paced the floor in my living room for hours, trying to make sense of everything. Suddenly, my thoughts turned to my wife. I hadn't seen her for a couple of days. Where had she gone? I remember her saying she was going out, but where was she going? Why hadn't she returned? I picked up my phone to call her, but I couldn't remember her phone number. Then, I realized that I couldn't even remember her name. I began to panic, as such information should not be hard to remember. Then it started again. The tapping. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, tap, tap. I opened the curtains and looked out to see my neighbor, watering his rose bush. But there was something at the base of the rose bush that I hadn't noticed before. A brass sign embedded in the grass read, "Planted in memory of every soul that had been lost to the house next door. May God have mercy on their eternally damned souls." I'd like to extend a huge thank you to hippiebathday for granting me permission to narrate their story for all of you guys. As soon as I heard the story, it really gave me chills, and I knew at that instant this was going to be the first story that I do a full narration for on my channel. It was kind of like my little test subject, so I'm really hoping that it does well. But yeah, hippiebathday, thank you so much. I really enjoyed your work. Also, a huge thank you to all of you, because this channel has only been around a little over a week now, maybe 2, I'm not entirely sure, but in such a short amount of time, I've reached so many goals and milestones on this channel. We're already sitting at 25 subscribers, which is crazy. I never thought I'd be able to hit that number in just such a short amount of time. I know 25 subs does not sound like a lot, but it is for me. So I'm eternally grateful for all of you, everybody that is subscribed to my channel and that watches my videos, likes the videos, comments on them, whatever. Just know I really do appreciate you. With that being said, if this is your first time seeing my face, feel free to subscribe to the channel because I am trying to reach 50 subs. That's my next goal, so if you like what you see, be sure to subscribe. Also, give this video a like if you liked it, and comment down below, let me know what sort of thing you would like to see me cover in a future video. Anything goes, so as long as it's scary, paranormal, anything horror related, I'll give it a shot if it's something that sounds interesting to me. Also, if you'd like to hang out with me in between uploads, feel free to follow me on my social media. That is always linked in the description box down below. I highly recommend following me on Twitter if you have Twitter, because that is where I am the most active. All of that being said, I love you guys so much, and I will see you all in my next video, whenever that is. So, stay spooky.